I had a really interesting epiphany this week. The entirety of the audio of the 1985 Frets interview that Jerry Garcia sat for turned up in my YouTube feed. It had just been posted, fairly recently within the last couple days, maybe weeks, I guess. And the photos from that interview had been floating around for a while on the internet. They're not great. The interviewer himself, whose name escapes me, talks about Garcia being at kind of bottoming out in front of his eyes. He comes into the room, his fingers are blackened, from doing nefarious stuff, and breaks out a giant rock of cocaine and proceeds to snort it. And the optics are not great. Jerry was on the cover of the magazine, and there's white powder on his black T-shirt. He looks happy, but not in a good spot. A few days later, after that, he was busted in Golden Gate Park. But the interview is astounding. He is bright and jubilant and extraordinarily articulate when he's discussing not only guitar technique but music in general. I think Frets is now defunct, so I'm not really entirely sure what kind of magazine it was. I gleaned from the context of the interview that it was, I guess, an acoustic guitar oriented magazine, and they do talk an awful lot about acoustic guitar playing. So I suspect it was an acoustic instrument magazine, but I'm not sure. So it was really interesting to listen to the interview, and my main takeaway that was enough of a motivation to bust out the gear and make a quick video was when he talked about using his pick. Now he called it a thick pick. He said he used very thick picks, and us deadhead guitar players know that Jerry preferred the 2mm graphite Adamas picks, which I've dutifully used myself now for years and years. And so Garcia, they asked him specifically, how do you hold the pick? And Jerry says, I always use the tip of the pick. That was really interesting. That really pricked my ears, because I've developed what I guess it's not a bad habit. It's not a whatever. I use the heel of the pick. That little passage of Jacaro that I played at the beginning of the video, that was me going back to the pick, just like back to basics, back to the tip. And, I'm choked way up on it, but you definitely can't get around the cross picking riffs as fast using the tip. He doesn't necessarily talk about speed, although the interviewer brings up using the heel side of the pick. I guess with a lot like 85, a lot of right in the middle of the kind of rise of glam metal. And, it's like definitely a post Eddie Van Halen world that they're living through then. And so he talks about, speed being an advantage of using the heel side. And Jerry said, no, I like the tip, and I get a lot of different tones out of it. Depending on how firmly I'm holding it or loose. I can get different sounds that way. So it was really, really interesting to hear his approach and how much thought he puts into something as really kind of small as where to hold the pick and how to attack the strings. So here, I'll play the Jacaro thing. This will be on the heel side. This will be kind of the way. Everything you've heard me play on this channel, I've been holding it, this way with the heel. But I'm trying to go back to that tip side. I really think there is more articulation there. And if you're going to spend all this money and practice all this time trying to learn Garcia riffs, it might be worthwhile to look at something as minute as how to hold the pick. So here we go. This is to clear up the confusion. This is the side of the pick here. In the room, I don't know if it'll get picked up on the microphone. That's a much rounder sound to me. It's a much softer attack versus that's the tip, that's the side. It doesn't bark. That's the tip. Yeah. So pretty interesting, I thought, just from my own nerd out standpoint. And, I'm at a point in my playing where I do think about little small things like this. I try to practice kind of globally, from all the way from like learning an entire song start to finish to working on technique stuff, like learning scales, working on modes, working on triads, working on chord voicings. And then tiny little things like video I made about, finger picking and how I approach picking the strings. But this was real fodder for somebody like me that sort of focuses on little tiny details and flourishes in the playing. I might be a little guilty of like trying to find the easy way out to everything when really like just good old fashioned hard work and woodshedding is really the only way around it. But yeah, I'll post a link to the interview because I think it's really charming. It really is kind of wonderful in its own right. They talk about all kinds of stuff. The photographer chimes in towards the end, like the last quarter of it. They spend talking about Clarence White, who I'm a big fan of, and Jerry clears up something I had always wondered about. There's a Kentucky Colonel's live album that Garcia Garcia introduces the band at the beginning of the recording, and I had always wondered about that. Like, where was he in his career? When did this happen? And it was way prior to the Dead. He said it was during his banjo years. He promoted the show. He booked the Kentucky Colonels to come to some venue in Palo Alto and play. This was during what I think Jerry would have called the folk scare. So like pre-Dylan or right around Dylan's first album, but everybody was a folkie. Everybody was a beatnik, back then. And yeah, it's just great. It really is. It's fun to hear him reminisce and kind of fill in the blanks because, I don't know if this is true for everybody. For a lot of us, the conduit to find your way into old timey music was the Grateful Dead. And so like, I went way down the rabbit hole with bluegrass, thanks to Garcia and some other stuff too. But it just was very validating to hear him talk about, kind of connect these dots about that very particular performance. That's on Spotify. I don't know if I can link to that or not. There might be I'll put a link to. I know there's a video clip of Jerry doing the introduction, and I'll include that in the description if you're so inclined and haven't heard that. It's very short and it's also kind of great. So 2mm pick tip. I feel like I'm starting from square one. I feel like I have to start all the way back at the beginning and kind of relearn. It has forced me to slow down a lot of stuff, which really I think is for the benefit of all, myself included. I tend to rush through things, and I tend to also kind of half-ass it and like, oh, that's good enough. And lately it's occurred to me that that's really not it. That's not the way to go about it. I spent part of last week going to see Dark Star Orchestra, and Jeff's playing the Garcia parts, like it's all there, all the little flourishes and parts and finger picking and just everything. It's all there. It's fully formed and realized. So, back to work I go. It's what I like to do. It's certainly like what I enjoy spending my free time doing. So there's not a ton to chew on, but maybe a lot to think about, I guess. How you hold a pick, how you choke down on it. I noticed that it really does help with those kind of false harmonic sounds. Now course, it's not going to do it for me. So pick, and I'll put a picture of the Adamas pick if you're not hip to that. Something to know about. Jerry, Trey Anastasio. I think those are the only two guys I can think of that landed on these picks. But yeah, and there's other ones around. Telefunken recently started making 2mm picks. I like heavy picks. I remember reading a guitar player, interview in the 90s, and him talking about 2mm picks. And, probably like, I don't know, shortly after high school. No, maybe I was in my 20s, I guess, when I switched over. But yeah, when I pick up a thin pick now, it doesn't feel the same. There's a, the attack of the note and the sound of the note and the quality of the note you're getting is absolutely related to the size, the thickness of the pick. I don't know. Maybe if people could chime in the comments and school me, because I'm not. I'd love to learn more about stuff like this. But is that an industry standard for bluegrass flat pickers? I don't really know. I suppose it takes all kinds, right? There's different strokes for different folks. But yeah, super interesting. It's a long interview. I had to come at it in a couple of sessions. I put it on doing the dishes, folding some laundry, putting my kid to bed, waiting for him to fall asleep, and listening with my headphones on. And I thought it was going to be a train wreck from the pictures and sort of the legend around it, and the way that the interviewer tees it up is, it's not great optics, like I said. One other thing I should note: the clip comes from this guy's podcast. So the podcast presenter has some 2 cents to drop about the interview as well. But just from a nuts and bolts, if nothing else, perspective, I found it to be super duper interesting. And that's just me. I like to be obsessive and nerd out about these little things. But that's kind of the great thing about the internet and about having a very tiny little platform like this to sort of expound on things. If this speaks to you, take a moment and subscribe. We would love to have you. The viewership's growing a little bit, which is a positive. I can't say thanks enough for watching and for commenting and interacting. You can follow me on Instagram too and see more of this. If this content speaks to you, there's more of it. There certainly is more of there to consume. And if not, that's great too. I completely understand. All that said, guys, it's December 2nd here, and it's cold in New Jersey. Wintertime is upon us, so it's time to kind of climb indoors and do some woodshedding. So great to see you, and we'll talk again real soon. Thanks.